All right. So this is kind of a big one. So I'm going to kind of jump right in without a ton of preamble. And it's a big one because there's a lot of content in it. And I think it just helps to start with it. And I have not read it ahead of time. So instead of talking about it and then reading about it and basically saying the same thing, I'm going to jump in. So, we're talking about status and hierarchy, which are really central in the third hub as it's kind of everything is, but one of the themes, with Parinama School last night, within what we're doing with Parinama is it's actually being conscious of things that are kind of operating anyway, and that our consciousness empowers us to understand ourselves better and have a better perception and relationship and reshape that. And for power, a lot of what we're looking at with power is, I think, because power is so taboo, and so many of us were shaped with like the demand of obedience and good behavior, um that our relationship with authority gets conflated with the relationship with power, and then as a result of that, our own relationship with our own power becomes a place where there's a lot of conflict. And so what we're doing here is we're looking at power as we've been reading, and now we're going to do a little bit where we move into some of the practical aspects of this. So I'm going to start reading, and yeah, let's see how this goes. All right, so it's funny with the microphone, it's kind of, I can't block it now to give the little visual like of reading, which I kind of liked a lot. But anyhow, hopefully you're ready. So, when people are unaware of their power, it's easy to extract it from them. The way to get people to participate in predatory hierarchical power structures is to pretend they don't exist, or to convince folks that they're receiving protection, or better yet, that that any negativity they perceive is a figment of their imagination. Power structures are always in play in any interaction, with extremes in excessive domination and subordination. So Keith Johnstone, if you may remember him from earlier in part one. Keith Johnstone was one of the co-creators of improvisational theater. And just as a reminder, I actually wanted to recommend the book. It's called Improvisation in the Theater by Keith Johnstone. It's a really disturbing looking book and it's like borderline. I remember when I first bought it, it was kind of hard to get. You can see it's very marked up. This is an extraordinary book about teaching. If anybody is a teacher, I really recommend this book in terms of how Johnstone approaches the role of supporting an individual in their own, like ultimately in their own actualization, but his ability to, his perception is extraordinary, and reading it is really rich. So this is a great book. You can get it on Amazon, but also one of the things I would recommend is first looking on eBay because when you can get used books on Amazon, but they usually get you on the shipping. eBay offers free shipping, and there's a lot of charity shops that sell books, and they send them out media mail. And maybe but anyway, highly recommended. Short read, but it's really rich. It's not short. It's like a short book, but it actually there's a lot to it. But so back to Johnstone in this chapter. So Johnstone's introduction of physical expressions of status revolutionized theatrical dynamics. See chapter 3. Quote, every inflection and movement implies a status, he notes, and asserts that theatrical scenes aren't believable unless actors incorporate the body language and mannerisms of status. According to Johnstone, every interaction in life between people involves high and low status behaviors, and depending on whom we're interacting with, we assume a status position relative to the other person. If we're unaware of how power is expressed and communicated, we can be vulnerable to people who take advantage, manipulate, or overpower us. Following are examples of indicating high and low status using Johnstone's method. So Johnstone in his chapter, really breaks out the both in verbal communication and physical communication, and I've summarized it here. And if so, I'm going to get into it. So here we have 4, as you can see, examples here of person A and person B discussing a vacation from Spain. So, person A, I just came back from Spain. Person B, it must be nice. I've always wanted to go. I've always wanted to go. Low status. Subtext from person B, you're doing better than I am. The next scenario is person A, I just came back from Spain. Person B, it's beautiful this time of year. Have you ever tried El Primo in Madrid? It's excellent. High status. Subtext from person B, I'm doing better than you. The things you're doing, I've already done. Person A, I just came back from Spain. Person B, disinterested. How fun. High status. Subtext from person B, you're not important. Person A, I just came back from Spain. Person B, overly enthusiastic. How fun. Low status. Subtext from person B, I want or need you to like me. So in some cases, status grappling competes in a race to the bottom to have it worse than everyone else in the conversation. An example is sharing bad news, but losing status to worse news. Our trip got canceled is met with, we can't even afford to think about a vacation. I'd be happy with a canceled trip. At least I'd be able to dream. Johnston says, normally we are forbidden to see status transactions except when there's conflict. There's awareness. This awareness supports our ability to operate more effectively in maneuvering in a maneuvering for status world. He believes his students should be able to act convincingly as either low or high status, and this is table 6.1 that we'll go over, depending on what a role calls for. To become more conscious of status positioning, Johnstone offers specific behaviors and physical cues. Using voice and sound, posture, eye contact, and relationship to surroundings, he provided techniques that allow for consciously influencing how others subconsciously perceive your status. Awareness allows us to play with hierarchy by operating in subtext rather than overt statements and actions. So This chart, it's on page 128 in the book. It breaks down the physical mannerisms and behaviors that are low status and high status. And Johnstone, let me see where he goes. Okay, yeah, I can talk about this. Johnstone talks about how his students would actually, as actors, would naturally be able to inhabit this status that they occupy in their lives. And what he was trying, what he would teach them is how to learn how to shift from high status to low status or low status to high status. Now, the reason that let's see if I have this in here. I don't want to step on the reading. Okay. It's sort of here. Is the reason that I placed this in the book, and I don't know that it's overtly stated here enough to see like the emphasis I sort of, I guess, intended to place in this. But when it comes to operating in environments, professional environments specifically is what I would use, but this works for really almost anything. Power dynamics that are social, socioeconomic. I think one of the ultimate high status signalers is emotional regulation. And so the ability to remain centered and not become activated. This is like one of the qualities that's associated with executive presence or diplomacy or even aristocracy, is to remain reserved and non-reactive. It's, and the thing I think that is, that with that being, considered stuffy or, like the kind of, like, I guess how like that gets assigned. Ooh, there's somebody yelling outside. I'm very curious about what this is. This might be something interesting happening in my quiet little block. But that's, and we kind of touched on this in Parinama school last night, sort of. Yeah, we did, because we did some conflict and negotiation. But the thing is with that is that it signals power. It signals power to be non-reactive. So let's talk about low status signals. So low status is unnecessary movements and fidgeting. High status is still and composed. The master, so this is not in the book, I'm going to speak to it, is Johnstone spoke of this, like, sort of the pinnacle of power signaling, which, because he spoke to the limited amount of consciousness around this, and that folks can often not understand why they're responding to you as though you're like, taking a position of power. And that is head movement. So he said, if your head is upright and unmoving, that is actually the signal, like this like ultimate signal of composure. So low status is moving head while talking. So it's like, look, I can tell you that the bottom line is that blah, blah, blah. And the holding the head while talking is to say, I can tell you that the thing is that blah, 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 blah. And, and even going back to unnecessary movements and fidgeting, and the thing about this is that you say it and it's really obvious, but it's really a matter of making it conscious. And especially conscious, the thing is if you wanna fidget, fidget all day and night long, but if if it would benefit you to signal power, becoming consciously aware of these things and actually operating from that consciousness. So this isn't like an idea of like how do you become a high status operator unless that is what you'd like to do that. It's just more about having these as tools. So eye contact. So low status is looking away and then quickly glancing back. So it's kind of like you're like, well, you're talking with somebody and then you look away and then you clock them again. So one of the things that's indicating is that you're like actually triangulating to them, like that their validation is something that you keep checking in on. So you're checking their reaction. So that is indicating the importance of their reaction as it impacts like you. Now, high status is eye contact, looking away and not looking back. But if you do look back, it's a long look. So it's something like this. Versus low status, which is something like this. Now, low status, adding short and hesitant or to the beginning of a sentence shows uncertainty. So he was really particular about this being something that is at the beginning of a sentence. So it wasn't even specifically speaking to ums as space fillers, which are also low status, but still, like as he was pointing to this quality. And this is more of a cultural thing because I don't think you see a lot of this, at least in my kind of travels, or at least in my life, I don't see a lot of this. But it would be something along the lines of like, um, well, I think we could blah 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 blah, or mm, um. So the high status is adding an extended. It's funny. This is funny, actually. So I want to go back to the low status. Is that it's adding a short and hesitant at the beginning of a sentence where it's like, well, I think we could so it's actually what you're doing. There's a lot of opening for somebody else to actually interrupt you and overtake you. Now, high status is actually doing the same. It's the same thing, but it controls the space. So it's adding an extended or to the beginning of a sentence, but controlling the conversation by not allowing anyone else to speak. So it's like, so this is like, well, the thing is, so you're actually holding space. That one's really funny to me because it is Yeah, it's good. Low status next. So trying to be small and inconspicuous or acting uncomfortable. The high status, I'm going to just jump right in, is taking up space and owning it, showing comfort and ease with surroundings. Now, one of the things I think that's immediately noticeable is that women are socialized to be desirable in being small, being talking tinier, occupying less space. It's like charming for a woman to kind of be like, "Oh, excuse me," "Oh, like that's kind of cute. Like it's kind of cute. I mean, this is cultural as well. Um, and for men, it's considered appealing to just really be dominant and take up space. But these are high and low status behaviors. And this is one of the places where, for women and people who are part of, who are in minority populations, is that there's a kind of subconscious and unspoken pressure to take up less space. So the importance of this is it can be very activating because we're dealing with, if somebody is occupying power and taking up space, is that it can be very activating to folks if you unapologetically take up space in this very particular example of high and low status. And so the important thing here before doing this in in loaded social dynamics, actually becoming comfortable and occupying your body and occupying space in your own life, in it, like comfortable in your own skin and comfortable letting yourself, if you're, especially if you're a woman, is just be bigger. Because if you try to occupy space and you're also not comfortable with the notion, you're actually trying to like puff up like a fish. It's like one of the things is composure, because the dis-ease or any fragment of discomfort that you have in an interaction where you're actually comfortably occupying space, if you are not comfortable in that, that will be detected, because it will be kind of pretty, it can, for some folks, like powerful folks, it'll be activating. So if you don't have solidity in it, it can become, it like the power, like there can be a grappling because they can try to undermine you in other ways. So if you don't have a strong foundation in that, that can become unsettling. So low status is crossing arms, toes pointed inward. So now we're starting to see this theme about smallness, size, like being related to status. High status, open arms and hands, sitting back, toes pointed out, and legs spread, inflating. So it's either shrinking or inflating. So low status is crossing your arms and even squeezing your legs together, toes pointed inward. High status is I am comfortable. So this has to do with your relative sense of comfort, and comfort and ease and being able to be relaxed. And this is all signaling emotional regulation, are high status behaviors. And last on this list, and not least, is low status is uncoordinated, rapid, panicked, and frantic movements. So, lack of coordination, clumsiness, awkwardness, all of these things that are, once again, emotional regulation signals. This is, going back to, was it chapter 5? Where we're talking about coordination, and synchronization as being indicators of a strong second hub. This is emotional regulation again, which is how at ease are you How synchronized are you with yourself and others? And high status is smooth, slow, and flowing movements. So, I mean, an example here about even like, say, uncoordinated, rapid, and panicked. So, say I'm opening this in a meeting or in an interaction or whatever, and and I'm like nervous and I drop it and it falls and I just very quickly pick it up and I'm embarrassed and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a klutz. Versus even if you drop something, you're opening it, you're opening something and it falls out. Let it rest on the floor for a moment. Don't scramble to pick it up and then pick it up. Slowing things down. Time is consistently the currency of power. And when we show that we can occupy it comfortably and that we're not existing in scarcity of it, we are signaling command and control. So kind of you drop something, wait a beat before picking it up. Sometimes you'll find, as another thing, is that if you drop something, you maybe notice it and you proceed, somebody else will pick it up. It's just a point of note. But even when you make a mistake or, like scrambling and embarrassment, immediately, oh my gosh, it's so, like, it really is about composure. And one of the things that, that underpins rapid reactions and reflexive reactions is like adaptations, is the shadows, is, it's like anxiety or afraid of being judged or looking imperfect or self-consciousness, So when we are looking to impart a sense of power, we slow down. And the person that controls the pacing is the person that's in control. And this is in a conflict and a negotiation. This is in a meeting. This is in an interaction. This is whatever. So, ready to speed up again? All right. So we can incorporate John Stone's methods using posture and ease to signal power, calmly taking up the space we occupy while using slow and commanding movements, and be aware that we signal lack of power when we fidget, make rapid movements, and contort our bodies to take up less space. And you can see, or possibly it's possible to see how with Harinama, what we are doing is we are disintegrating the hold of our adaptations, which tend to make us more anxious, more reactive, more defensive, more jumpy. And we're really strengthening our ability to regulate ourselves. So this works from all different angles as we are, it's like I almost look at this book and the different components of it of being particles that are sort of coming together to form a, sort of a cohesive like thing. So, all right, we've got some theory here. Enough with the practical stuff. Let's talk theory. You ready? Let's do it. Okay. So, zoologist and author of The Human Zoo, Desmond Morris, asserts that to be the top baboon in a colony requires an imposing physical or mental presence. Our physical presence and mannerisms signal our relative position in a hierarchy. Morris's 10 commandments of dominance, quote, apply to all leaders from baboons to modern presidents and prime ministers. The commandments include the display of postures and gestures of dominance, the occasional acknowledgement of extreme subordinates, and the use of brutal force when challenged. Taking up space and physical presence matter when it comes to power. A survey of Fortune 500 CEOs revealed that on average, they are 6 feet tall, approximately 2.5 inches taller than the average American man. Having relatively small bodies and being pretty may put some women at the top of a social power pyramid, yet these qualities signal low status when holding positions of ultimate power. This leads to a complex conflict that can be difficult to resolve. A woman will have to reconcile the two conflicting power structures she participates in: desirability and professional power. Along with cultural biases that favor small women who are perceived as charming and alluring, the notion that men are somehow more authoritative and influential is a Darwinian bias, meaning that it prevails because it's selected for out of perceived advantage and is not an absolute truth. Hierarchies exist in all human organizations and families. Even in so-called flat organizations, there will be jockeying for status. Again, the best way to use hierarchy to exert control of others is to pretend it doesn't exist. Office politics uses psychological tactics instead of brute physical force. So, having a few tools in your kit to demonstrate and express power with your body and mannerism can only help you. These signals are so deeply buried in the subconscious that people are often unaware they're being transmitted and received. But also keep in mind that, similar to a baboon colony, threatening the top baboon can be bad. Johnston teaches his students to be dynamic. Despite any wishes for it to be otherwise, there are times when it serves our best interests to play low status. Hierarchies are always organized around power, with rituals and obligations for the members to observe in different tiers. Common phrases like top of the food chain and apex predators are used to describe power and domination. Lions have long been considered the archetypal apex predators, although their top of the food chain status isn't necessarily due to their ability to kill what they eat. See Chapter 2. This is how power works in hierarchies. It's not about capability, but dominance. The most proficient predator in the natural world is the dragonfly, not typically considered apex, with a successful kill rate of 95%. It uses selective attention and the ability to calculate, predict, and intercept the trajectory of its prey, using less energy on chasing, leaving the kill rates to the so-called apex predators in the dust. The lion does not achieve apex status as a result of talents and abilities. It uses brute force. The dragonfly uses focus, concentration, and perception to accurately predict the route of its prey, arriving in its path ready for the kill. It may be the most talented predator of them all. Usurping traditional systems of power requires the ability to outsmart them, which first requires becoming aware of the game we're playing. Ta-da! The game we're playing. Yeah, it's funny. While reading this, the thing that came up for me is that there's been it's the first time I've read that actual section since the book has existed in physical form. And I'm just now realizing that some of the corporate folks who are asking me to come speak have asked me to talk about that, and that some of the content in there may not be might be kind of a little too controversial. So there's that. So we'll see where this goes. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't do those. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, thank you so much for coming along and reading this. I thought this one was going to be a little bit harder. So I'm interested, if you're watching this, your perception of it, like whether this was like felt kind of loaded. Like I don't know. I thought this was going to be a bit more like emotionally difficult or challenging. Maybe it's just because there was a lot of volume when I was looking at it ahead of time. But anyhow, any thoughts on this? I'd really love to see. One of the things that I've found in some of these sections as I'm reading them is they're just somehow more challenging for me. And even in reading them, as previously discussed, some of them I feel are kind of like a little, like kind of almost like works in progress, that they're still, they feel like there's kind of a way, like a little bit further to advance some of these notions, which, I mean, that's just how it goes. I mean, this is, yeah, I mean, that's just it. But it's also interesting because if anything, that's a reflection of me within the book, which is, yeah, my own process with this. Because I feel like so far before we got to this chapter, it's felt pretty like I've been like, yeah, that stands up. And these I'm like, oh, still a little bit of work in this. So anyhow, I really, Myra, of course, I mean, who, who am I to deny that my appreciation of your engagement and communicating with me? It means a lot to me. I guess I'll just keep repeating myself here. This medium, which I think has a lot of benefit, like a lot of really positive things here, is the medium of like YouTube videos. Is like I just can't see who watches them, and I'm disclosing a lot. And so the dynamic of it is that folks can watch these, and yeah, like and I not only not comment, but I'm not aware of who it is. So, and that's fine by design. It's actually more of just an observation of the experience. Um, but I really do appreciate feedback, appreciation, communication. Um, yeah, even when people write to me about things that they're kind of like pointing out, it'll come. The descent will definitely come. It's still early enough days that everybody, for the most part, I think that watches these probably knows me, or knows, like, or is at least 1 degree out and knows somebody who knows me. I think. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a couple of people who watch these. That's fine too. You're You're welcome. Giving you lots of good material. Um, but yeah. Yeah, so I guess the thing is, any interaction with these, comments, liking, whatever, it's just nice. It's really appreciated. And the next section is, I'm going to read negotiation and conflict. This one has been uh, a topic that I've done a lot of like workshopping on. I've done it in companies. I've done it did it last night in Parinama School, so it's shifted form, but I'm just gonna read it as is, and because we're just gonna keep on trucking here. So anyway, that is a wrap for me today, and again, thank you, and can't wait to see you next time. Bye.